You think if you stay an extra hour, he's gonna ask you to be his girlfriend?
He don't want you.
Hey, I'm Alex.
And I'm Faiven.
And welcome to Let's Talk About It.
If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel and like this video. Also, we want to hear from you, so comment below during the video.
Today we are talking about feeling lonely versus being alone.
They are very, very similar, but still wildly different concepts, so let's talk about it. But first, rapid fire. What's your favorite me time activity?
I like to eat by myself. I like to sleep by myself. I like to bathe by myself. The things that I don't get to do by myself a lot these days. I prefer to use the bathroom by myself. What is your favorite comfort meal?
Give me some mac and cheese. Give me some ribs, like really saucy ribs. What time in your life was the loneliest for you?
I think this time last year. My husband gets so busy during the Christmas play. What's something you'd rather do alone?
You mean other than everything that I already do alone?
Okay.
Cook. Stay out my kitchen. It's not cute. It's not romantic. I don't want elbows hitting each other. I'm a lefty. Let me just take care of the food. Go over there. How much time apart would begin to make you worry about the state of your relationship?
I don't do breaks, so when you say time apart, like you can take a few hours. What is a movie that you never get tired of?
I'd say maybe Elf. It's hilarious. Comes on every year. Would you rather cook a meal with someone or cook alone for someone?
It depends on how fast we trying to get this meal ready. What's something you would never do alone?
Romantic getaways. I understand confidence and solo travel, but I'm not gonna romance myself. What instantly snaps you out of feeling lonely?
I think being around kids, immediately you're pulled into their world. So go be around some kids. You won't even have time to think about yourself.
Not gonna lie, most of the time in my current adult life, I am alone. Like, I have friends, I have family, I do date, I do travel, but day to day, I'm alone. I'm doing my errands, I'm tidying up, I'm on the subway with headphones on, and that's my normal.
That sounds so beautiful. You know, the grass is always greener on the other side. I'm in the stage of life and parenting where I don't even go to the bathroom alone. Remy will come in, be like, oh, you're using the bathroom? And he'll close the door with him on the inside of it. And I'm like, okay.
Sometimes, you get an audience.
Yeah. It's cool though. How do you feel about all that alone time?
I think it's fine because it's a good balance. I also don't want to skip ahead to different seasons. Like, I'm in a single season right now. So obviously if I'm partnered for life and then have kids, like, I'm going to be like you, where you covet alone time because you never really get it, I'm sure. So I like to practice gratitude and appreciate every stage I'm in. And right now it is a lot of solitude, but I make the best of it. Like, even if I have a busy day, I try to wake up an hour or two early so I can have a slow morning. I love slow mornings, so I like to brew my coffee. If the weather permits, I'll sit on my balcony and just like sip and just relax. I like to have the me time before I'm doing things for other people, such as work. So I covet the alone time too, just like the peaceful kind of alone time. Not so much the busy subway, so you're putting on your noise canceling headphones so that you can block them out, but actual peaceful alone time where you maybe roll out the yoga mat, light some candles, just like do some stretching, and you're just like, this is the life.
That sounds so beautiful. It's definitely the goal for Joe and I. Like, if we could wake up an hour or two before our son just to kind of center ourselves before the day gets ahead of us, that would be great. But our son wakes up between like 5 and 6. Sometimes he tries it at 4:50 a.m. So for us to wake up before him is just not realistic. And I'm working towards an evening wind down where I have a cup of tea and maybe do like a nice evening stretch just to kind of, like decompress. But I'm not there yet. Like, in the evenings, Joe and I are so happy to have some time with each other that we're like, all right, let's grab our favorite snack and binge watch trash TV. And even though we're tired, and the trick to that is go to bed early so you can get ahead of the baby the next day, we're just in that season where this is the only sliver that we have. So we don't always use it responsibly, but it's like, this is the only time that we can just like reclaim everything that we didn't have throughout the day. Does that make sense?
Now I'm reclaiming my time.
Listen.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It's hard to be responsible and do certain tasks when you're like, no, I'm tired for one, and then me and my man are in the same room at the same time. Like, let's just turn our brains off.
Yeah, and now I'm competing with football because it's football season. The other night, our son was down, and Joe just hadn't come back to the bed. But I wasn't mad. I wasn't taking it personally or anything. I was like, hey, are you taking some alone time up there? I think was literally what I asked him, because it was just like one of those days where it had been pulling on both of us, and we still very much need our alone time separate from each other as well. But our apartment is so small, so sometimes if he's like off in another room, you know, whether he's using that to pray, read, or just like take a beat to himself, I try not to intrude and take it personally. I am a little bit more, I don't want to say needy, because needy has such a negative connotation to it, but like when I'm pregnant, like I want to be all up under you. But Joe is pretty consistent in what he needs and how he operates throughout the year. So when my stuff changes seasonally because I happen to be pregnant, I think he sometimes struggles a little bit because his needs haven't changed. His desire for space hasn't changed. And I'm over here like, hey, in addition to our son, wrap your arms around me. So yeah, but we're working it out.
Yeah, he adapts. I remember that one time when I had already built my morning routine and you happened to be over.
Oh, yes. We were supposed to work out together. And you ditched me.
You would take it too long. You was disturbing my peace. I'm used to being alone.
And you didn't want to rush, and you were like, I actually have a morning routine that I like, so this isn't going to work. And I was like, oh. But I was kind of relieved. Like, you know, sometimes you make plans, and then you're like, ugh. I was like, all right, that's my out. Faiven says she don't want to work out, so then I think I ended up not working out either.
Right. See? So you would have dragged me down. I still went to the weight room.
I would have done it, though, with you. But when you canceled, I was like, look at God.
I canceled it to do my regular routine and not move it later into the day because I had something to do after. But I was essentially like, okay, I'm going to go work out. If you want to work out, you can go downstairs yourself, or also there's a yoga mat in the closet. Bye. And that's what I did.
Yeah. I think in addition to just this like season of life and parenting that we're in, the reason that I have not felt lonely as of late is because I've always loved my solitude, and I love the silence and the peace that comes with that. I live in a city just like you live in a city, so it's just constant noise from people on the street at all hours. We live like right by a main street, police sirens, ambulance, like there's always some kind of chaos outside of the home. Then it's like neighbors beneath us that I hear, then it's the screaming child. So there is just always so much overstimulation, like even when it comes to day-to-day tasks. Like I love going grocery shopping, I love going to the gym, but I have learned now that I cannot overpack my days because I get so overstimulated if I'm doing too many outings at once. And the silence that I just yearn for and that brings me so much peace right now comes from my solitude. So I can't remember the last time I felt lonely, but it's been a long time.
Yeah. I know before when you mentioned that you were lonely when your husband is busy during the holiday time of year, and then you spoke up and then he accommodated your needs the best he could. That's interesting because as someone who's been single for a long time, I always think, oh, when you're in a relationship, you can't be lonely because there's a person there. But then I'm like, wait, I've been in relationships before, and I've 100% been lonelier paired up with someone than when I was by myself, just because of what they do or don't do for me. Have you ever experienced that, just because the person isn't really showing up for you, that you're like, dang.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been in like toxic relationships where the person was like intentionally like stonewalling me or giving me the cold shoulder, wasn't willing to like talk through things, and so I felt very isolated when we were in conflict. I felt very isolated if just I was going through something alone that I felt like I couldn't bring to them, and that is a very like sad and dark feeling, you know, because now you have somebody that's kind of intentionally manipulating and playing your emotions, you know, withholding things from you. And even now in my healthy relationship, like even when I have those feelings of loneliness and it's not malicious, it's not intentional, it still hurts, you know, but I can't lash out at him and, oh, you didn't do blah, 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 blah. He has his own internal world going on. And without me speaking up and addressing, hey, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I need, I can't expect him to be a mind reader. And I think sometimes people think that, well, you've been together this long, you should just know. But it's like, no, because just like one day you might want pizza, the next day you want a sandwich. Every day you don't want the same thing. Some days you want to cuddle, the next day you might be like, I run hot, don't touch me. So to expect your partner to be able to anticipate your needs all the time just because you guys have been together, X, Y, and Z, isn't fair to them. He's better at communicating his feelings, so I would have to say that I have learned a lot from him in terms of communicating in a healthy way, and not waiting until I'm so upset that now my delivery is just awful.
Yeah, I understand that. I do think there is a difference of it not being realistic when you want someone to be a mind reader versus you stating what you need. Like, hey, I would love to talk more, or when you come home from work, like, of course, unwind, but then like, let's maybe a mini recap over dinner or something, just like expressing how you would like to connect. And I think the problem lies when you do articulate your needs and the person still doesn't do it. So like, I think that's what happened in my last relationship last year, where it's just like, I had the loneliest holiday season ever because I had a boyfriend, but it was just like a vanity title. Like, he didn't act like a boyfriend at all. He didn't make plans. Like, he didn't give me gifts. Not that I'm a gift person, but what I'm saying is that like, I've literally sent him flowers for a job well done, and nothing like that has been reciprocated out of his own heart and his own, without being nudged, you know, and that didn't feel good. So I'm like, dang, I'm like off the market, just sitting at home, twiddling my thumbs. I had a cough for 6 weeks and never went away. So I stayed home instead of going to my parents' house for the holidays because I didn't want to get them sick. So here I am coughing and alone and lonely through the holiday season, and my boyfriend didn't even know that. So I'm like, wow, that felt horrible, which is why I woke up in January and let that...
Started a shedding season.
Yes, let that man go. Like, that's not for me. So yeah, you should definitely not feel more lonely when you partner up with someone. That's that's kind of insane for that to even be the case.
Yeah. One thing that I think is really cool that you do is you are willing to travel solo. I love traveling as well, but it's one thing when you're traveling by yourself and then you're getting to X, Y, and Z and you don't have to like talk or interact with people. That's my kind of traveling alone. But you went to a wedding where you're traveling alone and now you have to be like extroverted and talk to people. The way that would trigger my social anxiety, if I travel alone, it's so I don't have to interact with anybody. But you hold your own very well. And in a lot of situations, like I've been out with you multiple times and I'm just like shrinking into the background, like, and you're just like thriving. And I'm like, go ahead, Faiven.
Oh, why, thank you. You know what? Before I talk about my solo travel experience, I was thinking about one time when we were in a group setting with a lot of people and you are doing your, can they see me? Like...
I don't know why I'm like this.
Like, is she just like, it's so, I don't even, like, we talk about how it's funny how we even became friends because you're very much like, oh my God, please no one talk to me or see me. But what's funny is that because you have a social media following, we'll be out somewhere, and I remember one time one girl was just like, Alex, I follow you. And you're like, oh, okay, like... I just see her nightmare coming true that I'm like, well, yeah, I guess people don't assume that some people with a following could also be introverted.
I'm such an introvert. And everybody's always like, I would have never guessed.
It was so funny. I'm like, oh, this is her nightmare right now. She just wants to disappear. She wants to blend into the wall.
And I have an extroverted child. My child is a politician. He will high five everybody. He will wave. Don't sit behind us on the plane. He is just in your face. And everybody wants to talk to you when you have a cute little baby on your hip.
Yeah.
Worst nightmare.
I hear you. But yeah, traveling, I mean, the wedding you're talking about is I went all the way to Poland for a 3-day wedding, and I didn't have a +1 because I wasn't dating anyone at the time, and I also wouldn't want to waste space or have the couple pay for another plate for a random date I pull off the street just so I'm not alone.
So are you at the table with like all the singles then, or how does that work?
No, I think half of the table were singles and some cousins, and then there was a couple on the other side of the table. I think the bride knew us, obviously, so she was like, okay, let's put this chunk. But she didn't do that thing where, you know, some people purposely put the singles together so that they can meet and like hook up or date or whatever. Like they try to match make the singles.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't been invited to enough weddings, but okay.
Oh, I see. But no, this was just thoughtful seating. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, I went to Poland. I had a great time. The first night was the reception, and luckily I knew some of the bride's college friends. We did karaoke together once, and I think I met a few of them one other time in the city. So I did see some familiar faces. But yeah, it is awkward at first to like have a drink in your hand or not and then walk up to a group and be like, hey, like, because what are you gonna do, just be a wallflower or just sit there? I think I did eat some stuff by myself and no one was sitting around me. And then when people got more comfortable with everyone's standing up and mingling like a regular like bar type situation. So that was day one. By the time day 2 came around, we all knew each other from the night before. We sat with each other at dinner. We all danced together. And then by the time day 3 came was a brunch. And then we were kikiing and we were all friends. By then, a bunch of us had exchanged numbers. And now we have new friends. And like, I'm going to hang out with some of them in DC soon. Because like we stayed connected. So I love talking to people because I have a genuine interest in people, especially making adult friends is really difficult. So if you have a lot in common, if you have common people, obviously if you're at the same wedding, you know similar people. I'm not scared of situations like that because I have confidence and self-esteem, and also I public speak and I'm an actor. So that's stuff that makes the average person really nervous and scared and wants to retreat. I just don't have that in my body.
You know what scares me more than the first conversation with somebody? And this is whether it's like mutual friends, getting to know people, or somebody that you might be romantically interested in. But what scares me more than the first conversation is the second conversation, because in my mind, it's like, oh no, what if we talked about everything the first time around, and now this second conversation is going to be really awkward, there's going to be gaps, now I'm putting all this pressure on myself to keep the conversation going. And I think I was reminded of this when you were talking about, you know, with a drink in my hand or maybe not. So I decided to give up drinking completely this year. And the cool thing about that was that when we found out I was pregnant, I didn't have to go do the math. Oh no, did I have a drink, you know, during a time that I was pregnant and I maybe didn't know I was pregnant yet? I could with full confidence say, oh wow, I know that I was completely sober from conception, you know, throughout this whole ride. But drinking gives you this sense of confidence. And I didn't realize how much of a crutch it was for me until I went cold turkey and then felt socially awkward in these settings. And I guess, I don't know if I isolated myself in my thoughts. And that made me feel lonely, because I feel like negative thinking has a way of doing that to you. You think you're the only one that feels this way. You think you're messing up. You think that nothing is coming out right. And then that's why everybody drinks, right? Because they want that shortcut to feeling confident and feeling good. So part of my struggle now is like not feeling uncomfortable in those social settings that make me retreat, just because I don't have the alcohol to, quote unquote, loosen me up. I'm still very much learning who I am in those social settings without it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But you're also very discerning about what you say yes to. So I feel like you can avoid awkward social situations because you're just not going to go. For real, though. You'd be like, nah, I'm in the house.
Yeah, now, but I don't know. I feel like it took me a while to get there because I still sometimes find myself saying yes to things, and then I'm like.
But even with that, like even how we talked about how I went to that wedding solo dolo in a whole other country. I even had to drive with strangers both ways to the venue.
Oh, I would have
3
died.
hours.
I would
So
have died.
we landed in Warsaw, and the bride connected me with this couple who was coming from Berlin, and we were just landing around the same time. So she's like, oh, they rented a car, you should go with them. So for 3 hours, me and 2 people I've never met before in my life drove to the venue. And then a different pair of people, I drove back with them to Warsaw. And then we went out and frolicked in Warsaw, then slept at the Courtyard Marriott right across from the airport, and we flew out early the next morning. So I was just thrown into situations with strangers, and I was like, all right. But it was fine socially. But the only time I did feel loneliness was when we were walking to the ceremony part of the wedding weekend, and like everyone coming out of their hotel room situations and walking to the seats like was walking in a couple. It was a very couples heavy event, and I was like, wow, this is such a beautiful venue. There's amenities on the ground. There was a pool, a gym, steam room, sauna, a lake, like just activities you can do. And I'm like, this would have been an amazing date weekend. So I did feel like, dang, I wish I had someone. But it dissipated pretty quickly after I started having conversations and made genuine friends in that situation. But all that is because since I have done so much self-work and development, I'm a confident person and I don't need someone else to complete me. But that said, I still get bouts of loneliness here and there in situational things. Like, you know, when that stuff like that happens where it's like everyone else is in a couple and I'm like, yeah, I don't have a couple here. My own brother's getting married next year, and he was just like, everyone send their addresses and your plus ones. So I put my address in parentheses, no plus one, because it just is what it is. So I'm either the third wheel or the fifth wheel a lot of time, but it just happens to be my circumstance. So I'm not like crying about it, but former me would have been lonely versus alone.
Yeah. But I think whenever you do find your forever person, you're going to have such a rich just experience and memories and stories that you've created up until this point that you guys will have so much to talk about, you know, because like you haven't just been sitting on your butt waiting for a man. Like you are still very much living your life, traveling, having these really cool experiences that you guys can share and talk about one day. Because imagine you meet somebody, they're super cool, but they got like nothing to tell you. I've just been waiting to get swept off my feet, you know? So it's like, so you haven't done anything on your own? You've just been waiting? We could get hit by a bus tomorrow.
I agree. That reminds me of all the lonely men I've been on dates with. Even, I forgot the name of the article. I'll insert it if I can find it. But there was an article that talked about how New York City is the loneliest city. Like, even though there's so many people, a lot of people are going through life like Sims characters, or like how I even described earlier, how like headphones on, just going through the motions, getting on the train, going to Trader Joe's, going down your aisle, changing your podcasts on your phone, going back home, and rinse and repeat. And especially if you work from home ever since the pandemic and you live alone, it's just solitude all the time, and that can very easily spiral into loneliness. And I noticed that pattern when I would match with someone on an online dating app, go out for coffee or for dinner, and they have nothing to say. They're just there because they need company. And now I notice it because, for example, the person I'm dating now, he stated his intention to marry on his profile, and then he restated it on the first date.
Love that.
That's what he was here for. He's like, hey, I'm looking to get married. I would love to have a wife. I would love to have children with said wife. I would love my an older father to be around to meet my children, like just very intentional, and also has a very full life himself, which is very different from the lonely men who just have nothing to do on a Saturday. So they swipe online dating apps the same way you'll swipe through social media.
Yeah. As a first-hand witness to your dating life, I would say that you are a more confident single woman dater of the men's than you used to be in the past.
Wow, that was a very interesting way to phrase that, Alex. Okay.
Thank you. How do you feel like your perspective on loneliness, how you fill that void, has affected, if at all, who and how you pursue men? Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's probably a shorter way to say it, but...
Yeah, but
Okay.
considering how you started that, I was like, Faiven, just pay really close attention so you can distill what she
Okay.
was trying to say. How did it affect my dating? In my 20s, I felt the most lonely, I think, because I was fresh to New York City. I didn't really have the support of anyone to switch careers, and it was just a lot of solo decisions and insecurity, and then just loneliness because of that. So when I dated, I remember having a boyfriend that I would spend so much time with, and I feel like he was filling a void, because then I can just avoid being alone and being lonely because he's there all the time. So I just used him as a crutch. Like snuggle on the couch and watch movies and stuff, when it's like, girl, you should probably be researching stuff and figure out how you can make it in New York and learn about budgeting and things like that. But I just would just hide and envelop myself into the guy. And it's bad when you intend to sleep over 1 or 2 nights, say for the weekend, and then you end up staying 4 or 5 nights. You don't got clean drawers. You got to wash them out by hand. Listen, girl, go home. Go home. Alone time is good. Don't do what I did. He don't even want you to be over there. He texted his friends to say she won't leave. So yeah, I definitely had anxious attachment paired with loneliness, but that's also before any self-development, any podcasts, any reading of books that could help me and give me tools in life. So it was during my time of self-discovery where I hadn't done any work yet.
Yeah. Thinking back, just like I'm so happy now that I literally am forgetting like memories and experiences that no longer serve me, because I can only retain so much up here. But I definitely went through situationships where I so badly wanted to get chose that I lingered for too long, or the sleepover is over now and I'm just kind of like, twirling my hair. And like, to your point, like, girl, like, you think if you stay an extra hour, he's going to ask you to be his girlfriend?
He don't want you.
And it's so cringy to think back on, but I was just so eager for my affections to be reciprocated and for just wanting them to choose me. I don't know if that means that I brought those feelings upon myself, because if I was able to look at the situation neutrally, they have maybe never shown me any indication that this was going to be something that manifested into a relationship. Maybe I was a little delulu. I don't know. Leave me alone. But I will say, in terms of like major life events, like, I am so fortunate that I had my sisters by my side while I navigated grief, because children can only support you so much. Like, you can be in the middle of a meltdown and like your baby takes a poop and now you're like and it just like, you're just trying to have a moment, and in that moment you just feel so alone, because like, dinner still has to be made, the house still has to get clean, your children are just selfish, because kids just are by default, they only care about what's going on in their world. So even though I had siblings and I have a husband that was like super supportive, I have realized that sometimes, especially when grief comes in waves that just shock you and pull the rug out from underneath you, it's very easy to, for a moment, feel completely isolated with your thoughts and your tears. But I have no choice but to surrender to it. I think that's a different kind of loneliness that I'm feeling in that moment. I know I'm not the only one that's gone through a loss. I know that things will be okay eventually, because that's what everybody says. Time heals all wounds. But I'm also still in grief. You know, it hasn't even been a year. So I guess that is the bouts of loneliness that I'm dealing with right now. Sometimes the loss and the missing of my mother is so overwhelming that I just feel like I am alone with my heartbreak in that moment. But I'm not. Other people lost her too, you know? So yeah, still sitting with that. Grief sucks.
The older we get and the more real stuff that happens, like the loss of parents and health things and just real stuff that's not petty things that we complain about, sometimes it stuns you and you don't even know what to do. Like, you suffering through the grief, you're just like, look, I still do need to change this diaper, and like I don't really have time to pause maybe because do have to feed everyone else in the household. And then me as the friend, I'm like, I don't know what to do in these situations. And I was like, here, let me send some money.
Here's some money for DoorDash. It was much appreciated, though.
See, because I'm like, what? It is awkward because you don't know what to do, and but whatever you do is correct. Like, wherever, if your heart is in it, follow your instinct. You know what I mean? Like, don't force yourself to do something that you don't feel comfortable doing or whatever. But I'm like, just.
This is why you need solid friends, though, because even though she didn't know what to do, she like did something, and that small gesture helped me feel less alone through something that I just had never experienced up until that point. So to somebody else, it may have just been a meal, but no, it was a very appreciative gesture, and it took things off my plate so that I could just, in that moment, cry my ugly tears.
I'm glad.
Yeah, thank
Love
you,
you, friend. Oh.
Come on now, we got to get through this. I think everybody goes through feelings of loneliness at some point or another, but having a solid support system in your life, whether that's chosen family or otherwise, it helps.
Absolutely, because a lot of us have been there, and we're not even going to discount the fact that depression makes you feel lonely, because that's a whole other topic, like mental health. But it's real, and whether you have something clinical or whether it's just bouts of loneliness, like it's real and it feels really intense in the moment. So make sure you take care of yourself.
Yeah, and don't even get us started on social media. We talk about comparison so much and just scrolling and seeing all the other things that people are doing or the fun that they're having can then magnify those feelings of loneliness if you're not careful. So we want to hear from you. What do you do when you feel those feelings of loneliness sinking in? Or do you love your alone time so much it's a non-issue for you?
Yeah, let us know in the comments below, and be sure to like and subscribe and follow us on Instagram and on TikTok. And be sure to tune into next week's episode. Let's talk about it. Dating strategy. Our first solo sit down with just me and you.
Every time you say that about yourself, it's like I hear it for the first time. You're left-handed?
Yes.
Okay. I won't retain that, but we're still friends.
Barely.
Okay.